Hello everyone. We are going to learn about the chemical formulae, chapter 7.3 that you can find in textbook 2. So let us begin. Now before we start, let me just change my pointer options to a highlighter and see if we have the correct color. Alright, let me go for red and see if I change this into a highlighter. Okay, whoops, still in yellow. Let's just change this to red. Okay, just nice. Now, what do we know and how do we define a chemical formula? Well, it basically shows us the number and also the types of atoms. Now, in order for you to do so, you must be strong in your periodic table. All right, so let's have a look here. So if we have a compound which is H2O, all right, what it tells us here is the H is actually your hydrogen. So let me see if I can write this properly and scribble it on the slide. Okay, this is your hydrogen and this here would be your oxygen. Okay, so H and O here are your elements. H represents the hydrogen, O represents the oxygen. And what does this number, and this is what we call a subscript. Now, how do you remember this is a subscript? Think of a submarine. Submarine goes underwater. So if you see this in a lowercase or a subscript version, this is actually your subscript. Okay, the number 2 here refers to your hydrogen, which means that there are 2 hydrogen atoms in that water molecule. And if you don't see anything besides the oxygen, we will always say that there is only 1 atom. So the description is given to you here. If there is no number, then that means there's only 1 atom in this case. All right. If there is 2, that means there are 2 hydrogen atoms. Okay. So how are we going to write it? So first thing we have to do here is to identify the elements. So we have hydrogen and also we have oxygen. How many hydrogens do we have? We have 2. How many oxygens? We have 1. Normally in the case of a single atom, we do not write the number. Okay, let's go for a few work examples and you'll be able to understand what I'm saying. All right, so we're working problem number 1. So this is a diagram of a sulfuric acid. All right, it has the formula of H2SO4. And of course, by seeing these color codes over here, you will know that the white balls will represent the hydrogen, the red balls represent the oxygen, and the yellow ones represent sulfur. So as I've written here, step number 1, you need to identify the elements. So in this case here, because you're identifying, identify is a keyword that says you either write down the formula, which is H or S, or you can even write down the full name. So in this case, I choose to write down my symbols. So H for oxygen, H for hydrogen, O for oxygen, and also S. So you have 3 elements here. All right, so 3 elements, hydrogen, oxygen, and sulfur. Step number 2, you need to identify the number of atoms for each of the element. So let's start with hydrogen since it is in order. My suggestion here is you always list it based on the order. So let's start with the hydrogen. Let's count how many white balls do we see or white atoms. So you have 1 here and you have 2. So that would mean that we have 2 hydrogens in this case. And let's go for oxygen, which is in red. Okay, we count 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 4 oxygens. All right, and then we have sulfur, which is the yellow central atom here. So your sulfur is only 1 atom. Okay, so how do we write this? As mentioned, all right, you have H2SO4. So what we will always do here in the question, we will always give you as an order. All right, so you write it down as a H first based on this compound for a chemical formula, sorry. All right, so H. All right, H is the element. How many hydrogens? We have 2, so you must write your 2 over here. Please do not write your 2 as a superscript. Let me go over here. All right, H and 2. Okay, this is incorrect. The correct version is always the subscript. So we have 2 in this case. Now I don't like this. Let me see if I can erase it. Yep, there's an eraser. Okay. And change back to my highlighter. So it's H2. And how many sulfurs do we have? We only have 1. So we leave the S as it is. Okay. Now we go to oxygen here. So how many oxygens do we have? We have 4 oxygens. So the chemical formula for this is H2SO4. Working problem number 2. You are given these 3 compounds here and you need to identify the types and number of atoms. It is still the same question, but it's a different way of how they're phrasing it. So carbon dioxide, all right? I will always go for the central atom here first, all right? So how many carbons do we see? We see 1 carbon. So 1 carbon here. So remember, we have to identify it first. So 1 carbon, how many oxygens? We have 2 oxygens. Okay, so therefore, when you write your chemical formula, it would be CO and 2. Okay, let's move on with ammonia. We identify your elements first. You have nitrogen and you have hydrogen. So we write down nitrogen and then we write down hydrogen. Okay, how many nitrogens do we see? We only see 1 nitrogen. How many hydrogens do you see? If you answer 3, you're correct. Okay, and because this here is like a central atom, so we start with the central atom first. But normally in exams, we will try to give you a clue and you answer it based on the order that's given to you. Okay, so here you have N and you write down H, which is for hydrogen. And how many atoms do we have? 3. So therefore it is NH3. Okay. The third compound here is methane. Now, as I've said again, what is the first step? The first step is always to identify your elements. So there's carbon, which is C, and hydrogen, which is H. Okay. How many carbons do you see here? You only see 1 carbon. How many hydrogens? 4 hydrogens. So your formula, because this is a central atom that joins all of these hydrogen atoms together, we write it as C, H, and also 4. Okay, that is working problem number 2. If you're a loss, you can actually rewind this particular video and you'll be able to know what is going on. Okay. Working problem number 3. Okay, so this here is a typical exam question that I might give you, or this is something that you may encounter. All right, write the chemical formula based on the following descriptions. If you had this description, for example, each carbon monoxide molecules consists of 1 carbon atom and 1 oxygen atom chemically combined together. See that the carbon atom and also the oxygen atom is written one after the other. You have the carbon atom first, then the oxygen atom. You answer based on that order. Okay, so you have only 1 carbon, so you write a C. Remember, you only leave the 1 out when you only have 1 particular atom. Okay, and how many oxygen atoms? You have only 1, so C and O. Okay, so that is the particular chemical formula. Now, the chemical formula here can be very complicated as shown in example B. Each sucrose, or basically cane sugar molecule, consists of 12 carbon atoms, 22 hydrogen atoms, and 11 oxygen atoms that's bonded together. So what is the atoms or the elements in order? You have carbon first, you have hydrogen second, and lastly you have oxygen. So you basically follow this order. Okay, how many carbons do we have? We have 12 carbons, so we write as C and 12 at the subscript. Then we have hydrogens, which is H, and you write down 22. And you have oxygens, which is 11 atoms, so you write this as 11. So you have C12H22O11. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So in this case, I'm going to keep it. Great. So now let me just switch this off. Thank you for watching.